Right now, somewhere in a humid, dimly lit factory thousands of miles away, a worker is stitching together a pair of sneakers that will eventually sit on a pedestal in a high-end boutique in New York or London. That worker earns less in a day than you spent on your morning coffee, yet the shoes they are making will retail for $200. This isn't just a business model. It's a global heist disguised as inspiration. We've been conditioned to see the swoosh as a symbol of peak human performance, of just-do-it grit and athletic glory. But the reality is that Nike's true genius isn't in footwear. It's in the shadows. They have mastered the art of the gap, that massive, cavernous space between a $20 production cost and a premium retail price. This is how a company built on a $1, $200 investment in the trunk of a car grew into a $50 billion empire that dictates global culture while quietly navigating some of the most controversial labor practices. In modern history, the story starts with a simple realization. You don't need to make the best product if you can make the best myth. In the early days, Phil Knight understood that he didn't want to just sell shoes. He wanted to sell the feeling of winning. But winning is expensive. To fund the billion-dollar endorsement deals and the cinematic commercials, the cost of the actual product had to be pushed down to near zero. This created the blueprint for the modern shadow empire. Open corner bracket. By outsourcing every ounce of physical labor to countries with the fewest protections, Nike could focus entirely on the psychology of the consumer. They realized that if you tell someone they can be like Michael Jordan, they won't ask who made the shoes or under what conditions. The marketing is the mask. It's a brilliant, shimmering veil that hides the chemical fumes of the assembly lines and the cramped living quarters of the people who actually build the brand. If you break down the math of a standard pair of Air Maxes, the numbers are staggering. The raw materials, the foam, the rubber, the synthetic mesh, cost pennies on the dollar. The labor, often the most contentious part of the equation, usually accounts for less than 5% of the total retail price. So where does the rest go? It goes into the shadow. It goes into the massive overhead of keeping the brand omnipresent. It goes into ensuring that every kid in every city feels like they are less than if they aren't wearing the latest drop. This is the exploitation of aspiration. Nike doesn't just exploit the workers at the bottom of the chain. They exploit the psychological needs of the people at the top. They've turned a functional item of clothing into a social currency, and because they control the supply and the hype, they can keep the margins high and the production costs low. The controversy isn't just a relic of the 90s sweatshop scandals. While the company has spent millions on corporate social responsibility reports and glossy sustainability campaigns, the core of the problem remains. The system is designed to seek out the path of least resistance. When labor costs rose in Korea and Taiwan, they moved to China. When China became too expensive and regulated, they moved to Vietnam and Indonesia. It is a perpetual hunt for the lowest human cost to maintain the highest profit margin. Even today, allegations of forced labor and wage theft in the global supply chain continue to surface, often buried under layers of subcontractors that give the parent company plausible deniability. It is a game of corporate hide-and-seek, where the stakes are human lives, and the prize is a slightly higher quarterly dividend. Consider the just-do-it philosophy. On the surface, it's a call to action, an empowering mantra for the everyday athlete. But in the context of the company's history, it carries a darker subtext. It's a command to ignore the details. Don't think about the factory. Don't think about the environmental toll of the microplastics in the soles. Don't think about why a shoe costs $20 to make but $200 to buy. Just do it. Just buy it. Just be part of the movement. This psychological grip is what allows the empire to survive every scandal. When the public found out about child labor in the mid-90s, the brand took a hit, but it didn't pivot away from the model. It pivoted its PR. They learned that as long as the athletes are charismatic enough and the commercials are inspiring enough, the consumer will eventually look away. We are currently living in the era of hype culture, which is perhaps the most efficient version of the Nike shadow ever created. By creating artificial scarcity through limited releases and collaborations with high-fashion designers, Nike has turned their $20 shoes into investment assets. People now wait in digital lines for hours and pay thousands of dollars on resale markets for sneakers that were made in the same factories as the basic models. This is the ultimate triumph of marketing over reality. The gap between value and price has become so distorted that the product itself almost doesn't matter anymore. It's about the logo, the association, and the status. And while the resale market booms, the workers who actually glued those shoes together see none of that secondary profit. They remain trapped in a cycle of poverty that the brand's success depends upon. The environmental cost is the other half of the shadow. The sneaker industry is one of the most wasteful on the planet, relying heavily on petroleum-based plastics and high-emission shipping routes. Nike talks a big game about Move to Zero, their initiative to reach zero carbon and zero waste. But this often feels like another layer of the mask. You cannot have an economic model based on infinite growth and fast fashion sneakers and truly be sustainable. Every time a new colorway is released to trigger a dopamine hit in the consumer, the planet pays a price that ISN reflected on the receipt. They sell us the natural feeling of a running shoe, while the production of that shoe poisons the very nature they want us to run in. To understand Nike is to understand the modern world. It is a world where the image of a thing is more valuable than the thing itself. It is a world where we are encouraged to find our identity in the logos we wear, even if those logos were forged in conditions we wouldn't wish on our worst enemies. The shadow ISN, just a Nike problem. It's the blueprint for the global economy. But Nike is the undisputed champion of the game. They've managed to stay cool, stay relevant, and stay profitable by being faster and louder than their critics. They've turned controversy into a tool for brand awareness, proving that in the attention economy, even a shadow can be a spotlight. As you look at your own shoes, ask yourself what you're really wearing. Are you wearing a feat of engineering? Are you wearing a piece of history? Or are you wearing a carefully curated illusion? The $20 shoe didn't conquer the planet because it was better. It conquered the planet because it was cheaper to make and more expensive to dream about. The empire is built on the backs of those who are never invited to the victory parade. It's fueled by a marketing magic that makes us forget the cost of our comfort. The next time you see the swoosh, remember that it's not just a logo. It's a boundary line. On one side is the world of elite athletes, luxury, and inspiration. On the other side, in the dark, is the reality of how that world is funded. The shadow is long, it is deep, and it is exactly where the profit lives. In the end, the Nike controversy is a mirror. It reflects our own willingness to trade ethics for aesthetics. We want the shoes, we want the status, and we want to feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. Nike knows this. They've bet $50 billion on the fact that we will always choose the dream over the truth. They've won that bet for decades. The planet hasn't been conquered by a shoe. It's been conquered by a story. And as long as we keep buying the story, the shadow will only continue to grow, stretching from the factory floor to the stadium lights, reminding us that the real cost of just doing it is much higher than we ever imagined. The empire ISN, just selling footwear. It's selling a silence that we all participate in every time we lace up. That is the true power of the shadow. It makes the exploitation invisible, the inequality fashionable, and the profit absolute. It is the perfect machine, running on the fuel of our own desires, leaving a footprint that will last long after the shoes have crumbled into dust. This is the price of the conqueror. This is the weight of the swoosh. And this is the reality of the global game we are all playing, whether we realize it or not. The finish line is still miles away, but the winners have already been decided, and they aren't the ones running the race. They are the ones owning the track, the shoes, and the very air we breathe as we try to keep up.